The Void 3.0 subclasses have 3 aspects unique to each character and then 14 fragments that apply to them all. So far, only 10 of those 14 are unlocked, but today I'm going to show you how every single one of them works. Starting with fragments, we have Echo of Dilation. When you crouch, it doubles the granularity of your radar, and the reason that's great is because oftentimes it's hard to tell when there's more than one person in a particular spot. This one makes it obvious because unless they're holding hands, it'll show you 2 different ticks on the radar. On top of that, your crouch speed is extremely fast. I'm talking 120 mobility boost. We were doing some racing in a private match, and we had someone with 0 mobility using dilation versus someone at 100 mobility, and they were still faster. In order to get the exact same speeds, that person with 100 mobility had to run a lightweight. On top of this, it's a fragment that gives you 2 bonus stats to both mobility and intellect. Echo of Domineering gives you plus 50 mobility for 10 seconds and instantly reloads your weapons from its reserves, if there's ammo there of course, after you suppress someone. This fragment is a plus 10 to your discipline stat as well to help you get the grenade for that even sooner. Echo of Exchange gives you grenade energy when you melee someone. It doesn't have to be charged, and the amount is roughly 15%, or just imagine basically 1/6 of that melee box in the bottom left hand corner getting a bump. Number 4 is Echo of Expulsion. This one makes it so your void ability kills cause the enemy to explode. This could be a grenade, super, or a melee, for example, and the explosions seem to be around 7 meters. If they're right next to someone else, they'll deal 130 damage, but there is some noticeable drop off. So if someone was way on the edge of that 7 meters, for example, it'll deal a lot less. Worth noting that this fragment adds plus 10 to your intellect stat. Echo of Leeching makes it so that you and your teammates will heal on melee kills. I want to stress that this one does not need to be a charged melee, it's just a kill with a melee. It's not like Devour where your bar is just immediately full, but it is instant regen and it fills quickly. On top of that, it adds 10 resilience, which always helps for making your builds. I really love this one. And just before we continue, I want to mention that I'm now sponsored by Advanced GG. They sell a really tasty powdered drink called Focus that I prefer over coffee, and if you want 10% off of your own purchase, you can use the code CASTLE at checkout. I've tried a lot of brands over the years, and they are by far the best so far in my experience. There's a link down below in the description that you could use after the video. Echo of Persistence makes it so that your void buffs are 50% longer in duration. For example, on a hunter, that means you could go invis for about 7.5 seconds instead of 5, or on a titan running the right aspects, that overshield you can get that's normally 10 seconds, well, it'll actually be 15 if you're running this fragment. Understandably so, because of how this works, it's a minus 10 to the class ability, so it actually varies between the character. It'll be minus 10 resilience for titan, minus 10 mobility for hunter, and minus 10 recovery on warlocks. Next up is Echo of Provision, and as simple as it sounds, it's kind of complicated, I think. The perk says that damaging someone with your grenade will grant you melee energy. Pretty basic, but I struggled to confirm exactly how much from like a numbers standpoint. For example, I'd throw 1 spike nade on the wall and have someone walk into it, and I'd get 1/4 of my melee back. Then I thought, okay, since it's based on damage, I'll throw the same spike nade on the wall, and this time I'll have 2 people go in there at the same time. That way I'm dealing double the amount of damage with the 1 grenade. I didn't get any extra melee energy. I still just got roughly 1/4 of my charge back. So then I figured, okay, it must not be based on volume of damage. Maybe it's duration, right? So I had the same spike nade thrown, and then this time I had someone walk into it. As soon as they were done dying, I had the second person go in after them, basically meaning I could take advantage of the full length of the grenade. In that case, I did end up getting twice as much melee energy, so I think it's safe to say you'll get melee energy back as long as your grenade is dealing damage, regardless of like how much. I will mention this one stacks with momentum transfer, so if you really like to use your melee a lot on your class, definitely think about stacking those two. And on the flip side, without using a lingering grenade, like maybe the magnetic one, the sticky, because that one doesn't really have a duration, it's just sort of those 2 damage instances, it just ends up resulting in 2 different melee bumps, but still comes out to roughly that same amount, like 1/4 of your charge for killing 1 person. Understandably so, this one comes with a minus 10 to the strength stat. Moving on, we have Echo of Remnants. This one is very simple. It just makes your lingering grenades last 2 seconds longer. This could mean my Vortex or Spike Nade. It also means my Axions will chase for 2 seconds longer, but let's be honest, those things already chased for like 18 years. Echo of Reprisal is actually one that we could probably skip. This one doesn't apply in the Crucible. The word combatants means PvE, and I did go into a private match for PvP and confirm that it doesn't give you any extra super energy. Echo of Undermining. Your void grenades apply a weakening effect on the enemy, and for those who don't know what that means, a nice little quality of life change that Bungie has made, if you haven't noticed already on screen, is they've added definitions for these types of terms on the side. Basically, a target that's weakened takes 7.5% more damage from what you shoot them with. So if I was to hit them with a 140 hand cannon, it'll show 75 instead of 70. I believe it also makes them less accurate, like miss their shots, but I'm fairly certain, like 99.9% certain, that does not apply in PvP, which makes sense because that would be a lesson learned from the OG Duskfield grenades. Now for the 4 unlocked fragments, I could go through them and kind of highlight which ones I think are good, but realistically, you can all read what's on your screen there, and there's no sense me going through them unless I have the ability to define exactly how much the amounts are. Moving on to the aspects, we'll start with Hunter. Trapper's Ambush is essentially the Void's version of a Shatter Dive. When you're up in the air, you can slam down on the ground and a couple of things happen. First off, if you do it right onto someone, it'll deal 50 damage to them. It'll eat up your smoke charge and then make you go invisible, plus put a little bit of a smoke cloud around you. And the reason I mention that is because if there's someone in there, like I just talked about, they'll actually get that weakened effect that I just mentioned earlier. This aspect isn't just the Shatter Dive though, it also allows you to use your smoke to make yourself and your allies go invisible when you throw it at them, sort of like old school bottom tree. Now, Vanishing Step is probably the simplest of them all. When you dodge, you get 5 seconds of invisibility, and remember, when paired with the Persistence Fragment, it's 2.5 seconds longer. Plus, I believe it'll also stack with Graviton 3 ways, but definitely speak up in the comments if it's only 2 out of those 3 that actually will. Last up for Hunter is Stylish Execution. This one's kind of neat. If you kill someone while they're weakened, volatile, or suppressed, you will go invisible and then gain True Sight. Some examples to remind you are that smoke can count for weakening, suppressor nades for suppression, obviously, and then volatile. Actually, I'm not sure how you would do that on Hunter. I feel like I'm having a brain fart right now. Maybe that locked fragment giving you volatile rounds to your weapon. Anyways, it's important to know that you will have to get the kill while they're weakened. Like if I were to shoot someone and then finish them with a suppressor nade or my smoke, that won't count. I have to cause the effect on them first, then kill them. Wombo combos are reliable for it. Now, once you do achieve that, you'll get True Sight, which is up for 8 seconds, and that's the old school, spectral wall hacks. Then I guess the cherry on top would be the fact that during those 8 seconds, if you go and melee someone else, they will also become weakened, which again means they're going to take 7.5% extra damage from anyone shooting them. But worth noting, it only lasts for 3 seconds. Now, Bungie was obviously worried about giving everyone wall hacks, so they implemented a cooldown called Too Stylish. It pops up on the left-hand side of the screen, and it essentially means you can't get this thing to loop for another 12 seconds. Onto Warlocks, we have Child of the Old Gods. Dear Lord, this is a beast of an aspect. I'll do my best to be quick and clear. When you drop a rift, a purple buddy will pop up with a 25-second timer. So far, it's not doing anything for you, but the moment you shoot someone, it'll zoom over to them, and I'm talking huge range. It might even be infinite. Worth noting, it does get deflected if it hits an object, but it's really quick and it can cover a massive amount of ground. Once it gets there, it'll start draining that person that you shot at and anyone else within 10 meters of where it's sitting. The draining effect deals 11 damage every 3/4 of a second to everyone affected by it. Now, the reason this is amazing is because not only is that happening over there against your opponent, while it's happening, think of it as a transfer of energy from them to you because you can actually get a buff from it. If you're running a healing rift, you'll get 3.5% grenade and melee energy every 1.4 seconds. But if you're on an empowering rift, it's insane. You get 25 health back every 1.1 seconds. It literally converts the empowering rift into like a pseudo healing rift, I guess. I don't know. It seems insane to me. And on top of this, if you happen to kill a person getting drained by your little void buddy, you'll get a third of your rift charge back just to do it again. I think Bungie's attempt to balance this thing was the fact that your opponent can shoot your little buddy to kill it. If you see this thing on its way to you, it's got 150 HP. You can kill it if you're quick enough. Moving on, we have Chaos Accelerant, which I'll say does 2 things. Step 1, it allows you to charge your grenade. Step 2 is what it does to the particular grenade that you've just charged. It only applies to 4 out of the 7 possible void grenades, and to be clear, when you throw an uncharged grenade, it's no different than the base version if you didn't even have this aspect on. For the Vortex grenade, it doubles the size of it. I think it was 6 meters to 12 meters, and it'll add roughly 2 seconds to the duration. For the Axion Bolt, it'll add a Seeker, so 3 instead of 2, for example, and what's really neat is it makes it fast as hell. You can run away from regular Axions by sprinting, but these ones will catch you unless you're using a buff from like an exotic or a lightweight to make you faster at sprinting. Now the scatter grenade is, you know how it's just like this messy explosion of 8 bolts? Well, the charged version is basically the same, but if you happen to miss by a little bit, they'll track over to your opponent. I just want to say you got to be pretty close. Like, it has damage drop off, so it sort of defeats the purpose. I don't really think it's as good as Axion, for example, at least not for this aspect. But moving on to the 4th grenade, we have the magnetic sticky. When you charge this thing, think handheld supernova. It's just monster of a grenade. All right, the 3rd one for the Warlock is Feed the Void. Your Void ability kills will grant Devour, which is a beastly empowerment. Whenever you get a kill while Devour is active, your health is instantly full, like faster than ever. It lasts 10 seconds after the Void kill, but this aspect makes it so every kill will actually extend that Devour timer for 5 seconds to a cap of 10. Essentially, once you get that first Void kill to activate Devour, you can go on a tear in quick play. The last thing to mention is that when you do get that initial Void ability kill, you'll randomly get 20% of your grenade charge filled up. Okay, now for my Titan mains, how about the Bastion aspect? When you pop a barricade, which by the way has a different animation that's both a hair quicker and doesn't push you forward, you'll get an overshield. It's 45 HP. It's not 100, even though the bar on your screen fills up completely. What's really amazing with this though is that you can leave the barricade and keep the overshield for 10 seconds. And remember, the persistence fragment will change that to 15 seconds. Additionally, it works for your teammates. Like, they can just walk up to your barricade and get that overshield. Also, it's worth noting, let's say you left your barricade and you took some damage, so you lost your overshield. You just go back behind it because it's constantly charging it. That's why they call it an empowered barricade. As long as you're within 5 meters from the backside, it'll charge your health at 10 HP per second. Next, we have offensive bulwark. I don't know. How do you say that? This one goes hand in hand with Bastion because it buffs you while you have an overshield active. Your grenade charge is way faster. Like, I did 3 tests on this and they all came out to 200%, which is 3 times as fast. On top of that, when you have an overshield, your melee will deal 20% more damage. So with Bungie's rounding, it'll typically show like 120 or 121 on screen instead of that baseline 100 damage melee. If you happen to be using the shield throw, then you'll see a 73 on screen instead of a 61. And a side note, I did test Synthoceps. It does not stack. That was really smart of Bungie because I was thinking, oh my god, 120 damage melee plus 85% is over 200, but fortunately that does not work. 2 more things for this aspect is that it increases your melee range by what seems to be about roughly 1 meter. And then if you happen to get a kill with your melee, it'll extend that timer on your overshield for 2 seconds, but only if you have the overshield, obviously. Thirdly is the controlled demolition aspect. Hitting someone with void damage like your shield throw or bash, grenade, they'll make the opponent volatile. And that mechanic is kind of odd. I don't really know how best to explain it. Like, I don't know the tipping point on when you make someone explode while they're volatile. But essentially, after dealing enough damage or killing them, they'll end up exploding. And then that explosion will thereby deal more damage to their nearby teammates. This can cause a chain reaction, which is why people are loving this in PvE. Like, it's really, really fantastic. For PvP though, it's very situational. Even with the fact that you and your team get a health boost similar to old school middle tree, it's still just not super often in Crucible. To cap off the video, I thought I'd make a quick recommendation for all 3 characters. I will be working on a thorough video for Titan as soon as the other 4 fragments are unlocked, but I solicited some expert opinions from other people like Appa for Warlock and Shadow for Hunter. On Titan, I'm currently enjoying the shoulder charge with a spike or vortex grenade alongside Bastion and offensive bulwark, which gives me 3 fragment slots. For those, I like to use Echo of Leeching and Persistence, and then I've been flexing the 3rd one, sort of digging Exchange and Dilation lately. On Warlock, Appa figures it's good to use Chaos Accelerant for your Axion bolts, which, no surprise, those things are insane. And I'm sure he's going to end up discussing when he runs the Child of Old Gods versus the Feet of the Void aspect. I'm guessing it's going to differ for quick play or trials, but either way, for Fragments, he's been digging Leeching, Remnants, and Expulsion. Regarding Hunter, Shadow actually felt equally across all 3 and couldn't really tell me which 2 he likes the most, so I'm probably going to assume that he'll go through that in his own video. And on Fragments, he said as long as you're running Persistence for longer invis and then Dilation for those bonus stats, he feels like that's good enough. Thanks for watching, I hope it helped, and subscribe if you liked it to catch my next one. Cheers.